Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Ben Thomas Show. That's right, we have another EXO-6 announcement pre-order window opening. And that is for Security Chief Sulu from the Mirror Mirror universe. I am extremely excited about this figure, but I've got some takes on it as well. So thanks for coming back, stick around, let's talk some Star Trek. Okay guys, so if some of you guys are unfamiliar, Sulu is from the original television series created by Gene Roddenberry, and the Star Trek that this gentleman in particular comes from, that's George Takei as Sulu, is one of the most iconic television shows of all time. I know that Star Trek is not always the most sexy property, but wow, does it have a following, and I'm right there. Now, you've heard me say lots of times that I'm more of a Star Trek The Next Generation fan. That just is the way it is. That's what I was raised with. But people who were raised with the original series and saw characters like George Takei being an Asian gay man on television was amazing. Now, back when Star Trek was released, I don't think he had come out as gay yet at that time. But of course, Gene Roddenberry always did a really good job at trying to create a cast of characters that were an eclectic cast, that they were different than the everyday white television actors of that time. And we got to see that with Sulu. We got to see that with Uhura. This stuff was groundbreaking. So for those of us who love George Takei or love Sulu as a character in Star Trek, I'm extremely happy for those folks. I think this figure looks fantastic. I think the head sculpt is on point. Now, to rewind a little here, just so again we're all on the same page, this representation of this character comes from the episode Mirror Mirror, and this is essentially an evil mirror universe version of the Sulu that we all know and love from the original episode to episode. That's Lieutenant Sulu. This character in particular is Security Chief Sulu, and he has a big scar on his face, unlike our normal Sulu, which just gives him a little character and again just shows a little bit of that evil dark side to him. And this episode is iconic for some of the Star Trek memes of Sulu that we've seen slowly over time that have come out of him kind of grinning at the camera, these kind of evil grins that he kind of coined as part of his character. And I love it. I think that EXO-6 has actually captured that look pretty well in this particular head sculpt. It's interesting to note that EXO-6 has come out to say for previous figures that there are going to be multiple releases, different colors of the outfits, whether you've seen them on screen or not. So that's been interesting, and I've been wondering about some of the production challenges that they may have with that. Right in the advertisement for this figure on the website, it says this is the only option of this character that is coming. Now, that's not to say that this is the only Sulu that we're getting, but this is the only version of the Mirror Mirror Security Chief Sulu that we're likely to see, which I think will drive this guy's value up in the secondary market like crazy. Because once people realize that this is the only time you're going to get this figure in hand or in your collection, I think he's going to be really hard to find at a decent price on the secondary, just like we've seen with some of the other EXO-6 releases so far. Picard is almost impossible to get now in terms of the first contact option. Data, same way. Once these guys go out of stock, that's kind of it. And EXO-6 has been really good to say that we probably won't necessarily see reissues of these figures. And I think that's partially just because Star Trek as a franchise has so many character possibilities that why go back and reissue when there are so many cool ones that they can come out with. And so we'll see. That remains to be seen. EXO-6 is still pretty early in their development, and they may change their tune 10 years from now. They may want to re-release some of these guys, but in the meantime, I think a lot of these figures will go Grail status, so just keep an eye out for that. I'm not saying for the people who don't want this figure you should buy it as an investment, because you should never buy a figure as an investment. Buy this figure if you love the character. If you love who this guy is, or you love this representation in this particular episode, it's a must-have. Now, I do have some takes on the outfit, so let's get into that a little bit. Personally, I like the classic look of the Star Trek uniforms. The mirror version of the outfit, or the uniform that they wear, is still really cool and really iconic, but I like the Starfleet badge in comparison to this circular badge that we see on this guy. The sash is really unique to this particular character, but I think that the material choices that they've used on the upper body and on that sash look really, really good. I like that they've given him the iconic dagger from that particular episode that they featured this guy in. I love the phaser. The phaser looks perfect, in my opinion, for the original series, and for somebody who might only collect next generation EXO-6 figures like myself, that means that I won't really get a phaser like this in hand unless I try and find one on the aftermarket or have somebody 3D print it or whatever. But I really like the look of that phaser, as well as the communicator. I think that also looks really, really good. And of course you get at least 8 hands with this figure, which is a pretty good selection. For the price point of this guy, EXO-6 continues to show us that you can have a good quality figure, good quality head sculpt with great likeness to the actor, and a decent amount of accessories for a very reasonable price. This guy's still only coming in at $198 United States dollars plus shipping, and it looks like the shipping is a flat rate of $20. Now that is a bit of a subtle increase from what we've seen on some of the other figures. Originally we saw Data and Picard coming in at the $180 mark. This is now increased by that $20, but in my opinion that $20 is negligible if they continue to produce this level of quality. And from what I've seen, most Star Trek people, the fans of Star Trek out there who are collecting these 1/6 lines, they've been really happy with the quality of EXO-6 in hand, which is really important because photos like the ones we're seeing can only do a figure so much justice. Under regular lighting or under your display lighting, these figures can come to life. I purposely don't have really bright lights on my figures because I like the way that shadow casts over them. And I think a figure like this Sulu is going to look fantastic. The color of the uniform really pops and feels really screen accurate. Pant material, I'm curious to see what that's going to be like in hand. I hope he has a reasonable level of flexibility with it, because Sulu, especially in this episode, but throughout all of the original series, is probably the most dynamic in terms of his movement. He clearly has some martial arts training in some of these episodes, and you get a chance to kind of get a taste of that, which, you know, looking back, I think it's funny that it's really only him that gets that, as opposed to some of the other characters, but that's okay. I would still want to be able to pose this guy in some dynamic poses if you could. But even this photo where he's, you know, staring at the dagger, I think that is a really just like neat, iconic pose for him, and it's a museum pose. It doesn't have to be crazy dynamic for Star Trek, right? But like, look at the grin on his face. And again, I just think the likeness to George Takei is really, really good quality. Now, this is the second release of the Mirror universe. The first release was the Spock that came out, and of course it's, you know, Spock with the goatee. Clearly he's evil if he has a goatee, right? That's just the way she goes. I think it's cool that if you already own that figure, then this seems like a shoe-in for your new this seems like a shoe-in for your collection to go along with that Spock. I'll be curious to see what else comes out in the Mirror universe line, or are they going to stop with this one? They haven't really said necessarily. And so, developer, if you're listening, let us know in the comments, because I know that there's a lot of Star Trek fans that are getting pretty amped up. And honestly, again, the price point for these to me feels extremely reasonable for the quality that you're getting and the amount of accessories that come along with it. Now, I do have one concern, and that is the boots on this figure. If you take a closer look, it looks like we're getting the long pleather boot material kind of all the way up just past the knee. Now, It's been my experience with Hot Toys and other 1/6 collectibles that anytime we encounter this type of material, it flakes. And not for everybody. It seems that it obviously makes a difference if you're in a humid climate or not. I'm in Calgary, Alberta, so it's pretty dry here. And I'm in a cold basement where all my figures are collected. And so I'm not too worried about moisture. I think if I were to have this figure in my collection, it would probably last a while. You can also look at treating this type of material depending on if you feel like that's something that you would want to try. I do caution that though, because of course you can make it extra greasy if you use the wrong stuff. This does not appear to be full leather. It does appear to be more of a pleather material, and again, in our experience as 1/6 collectors, I know that we always are feeling a little bit worried about that. We've seen flaking issues with figures like the T-800, Catwoman from the Batman movies, or the Dark Knight trilogy, and so many others. I mean, let's be honest, we could go on it all day. But of course, if this was genuine leather, that would increase the cost of the figure as well, and I'm really happy about the price point here. So this figure may not come to my collection because, again, I want to collect next generation figures specifically. I also know that they're going to come out with so many more characters. They just will. And so I'm really excited for those folks out there that are getting this figure. I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments. What are your concerns about the boots, if any? Is there any inaccuracies on the suit or the uniform that I'm just not seeing? Is it a deal breaker if those boots were to flake on you? If otherwise you truly want this figure in your collection? I think if you love George Takei and you love the original series, this seems like a must buy. So as you can tell, guys, I'm pretty excited about this figure. There are some things that I'm a little bit concerned about. I think I made that obvious in the video, but it's not a deal breaker for me. And for anybody who's loving the original series, maybe you are an old fan or a new fan that's just finally experiencing it, I am really excited for you if this is a figure that you've been waiting for. It may not come to my collection, but that's okay. I would say that overall, I would still give this figure a solid 8.5 out of 10, just based on what we're seeing with these images. And maybe some of the things that concern me will surprise me, maybe not, hard to say. But I'm just really happy to have more Star Trek 1/6 figures in hand. So if you guys are excited for this guy, definitely leave me a comment. I'd love to hear about it, love to hear your thoughts on the figure as well. And if you can, hit the like button, smash the subscribe button, and we'll catch you on the next Star Trek EXO-6 video, guys. Have a good one.